The millionaire was to kiss his fiancée, but his lips found the woman he could never forget. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. A millionaire about to kiss his fiancée, but something unexpected happens. It all begins on the night of a grand event, a night meant to seal his future, but fate had other plans. The room was filled with whispers and laughter, the atmosphere buzzing with excitement. The gala was one of the most anticipated events of the year, and Liam Parker, the tech billionaire, was at the center of it all. He was about to do something that had been expected of him for weeks: kiss his fiancée, Emma, in front of the gathered guests. The guests had already whispered about their upcoming wedding, about how perfect they seemed together, and how it was the perfect union between two powerful families. Everything was set in place for a flawless moment, and Liam was ready to make it happen. But then, as he stood there, facing Emma, something stopped him. It wasn't that she wasn't beautiful, or that he didn't care about her, but there was something missing, something that tugged at his heart, something he couldn't ignore. He had been preparing for this moment, rehearsing for weeks, but the closer he got to her, the more he realized he wasn't sure if this was what he truly wanted. His eyes wandered, and for a brief moment, he caught sight of a woman standing across the room. She wasn't supposed to be there, a mix-up in the guest list, perhaps, but her presence was undeniable. She had an aura about her, a quiet strength that pulled him in. Her eyes met his, and the world seemed to blur around him. Emma, his fiancée, had been waiting for him to kiss her, to seal their engagement, but Liam's mind was elsewhere. He couldn't take his eyes off this stranger. The woman stood there, as if she didn't belong in this glamorous world, yet somehow, she was the only one who seemed real to him in that moment. Liam blinked, trying to refocus. He looked at Emma, who was beaming with anticipation, but then his gaze drifted back to the woman across the room. There was something about her, something that felt so familiar, yet completely out of place. He had no idea who she was, but the pull was undeniable. He could feel his heart racing. Emma was still waiting for him, her smile faltering as she sensed the distance in his eyes. The moment was slipping away, and Liam knew it. He had promised Emma this night, this moment, but his lips, his heart, weren't where they were supposed to be. He had no idea what was happening to him. It wasn't just a passing distraction. It was something deeper, something he couldn't ignore. The woman's presence had awakened something inside of him, something he had buried deep within for so long. He had been living a life of expectations, of obligations, of keeping up appearances, but in that one look, something inside of him stirred. He wasn't sure what it was, but it felt like a wake-up call, a moment of clarity. He couldn't kiss Emma, not now, not when he felt like this. It wouldn't be fair to her. He had to know more, to understand what was pulling him toward the woman he didn't even know. But as he walked toward her, the distance between them growing shorter, his heart skipped a beat. He was about to make a choice that could change everything, a choice he never saw coming. His lips weren't meant for Emma anymore. They were meant for someone else. The music in the background faded as Liam approached the mysterious woman, and he felt his life changing in that moment. Would he be able to resist the pull, or would he make a decision that would haunt him forever? Let's go back to the beginning of the evening and see what led Liam to this unexpected choice. The night was still young, but the atmosphere had already shifted for Liam Parker. The bustling gala continued around him, but his attention was no longer on the guests, the speeches, or the plans for the evening. His mind was elsewhere, consumed by the woman he had just locked eyes with. He had promised Emma, his fiancée, that tonight would be perfect, the night they sealed their engagement, their future together. But now, standing there, his heart was torn in a way he had never anticipated. He tried to shake it off. He had done what was expected of him, right? He had followed the path set before him, and everything was falling into place. Or so he thought. Emma, standing at his side, was glowing, her smile radiant as she waited for him to kiss her. Yet, Liam felt a strange distance from her, as if he were standing on the edge of something, staring into an abyss he wasn't ready to face. Liam, Emma said softly, her voice a gentle reminder of the moment they were supposed to share. She smiled again, but this time, there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. What's wrong? Liam's gaze drifted again, back across the room, to the woman who had unknowingly captured his attention. She was standing by the large windows, the soft lighting casting a halo around her, almost as if she were not supposed to be in this world of wealth and influence. She looked like she belonged to another life, a life far simpler, far more real. Liam wasn't sure what it was, but something about her pulled at him. He had always been used to controlling every situation, to maintaining the upper hand in every relationship, but this felt different. The woman wasn't playing a game. She wasn't looking for anything from him, and that made her seem even more intriguing. Her presence was subtle, almost like a whisper that grew louder the more he tried to ignore it. Liam swallowed hard and forced his attention back to Emma. He could feel her warmth beside him, but it didn't feel the same. His thoughts were all over the place, tangled in a knot of confusion and longing that he didn't know how to untangle. "Nothing's wrong," Liam said, offering a half-smile, trying to hide the turmoil brewing inside. "I'm just tired, I guess." Emma nodded, accepting his answer, though Liam could tell she wasn't fully convinced. She had always been perceptive, and she knew when something was off with him. She leaned closer, her voice soft and full of warmth. "We've been through a lot, Liam. It's okay if you need a break. But I'm here, okay?" Her words should have comforted him. She was the woman he was supposed to marry, the woman who had been by his side through thick and thin. Yet, even as she spoke, his thoughts were elsewhere, drawn once again to the woman across the room. The sound of laughter and chatter seemed to fade into the background as Liam took a step back, giving himself a moment to breathe. Emma's hand reached for his, but he hesitated for just a fraction of a second before taking it. The moment was fleeting, but the sense of disconnect was real. He wasn't sure why, but everything felt different now. He had thought he knew exactly what his life was going to look like, a successful career, a beautiful fiancée, the perfect life. But now, standing there, staring across the room, he realized he didn't know anything at all. He had been so focused on the future, on the success that awaited him, that he had neglected to ask himself the most important question: what did he truly want? He didn't know what it was about the woman standing by the window, but she had a kind of quiet strength that drew him in. It wasn't just physical attraction. It was something deeper, something that resonated with him on a level he couldn't explain. As if she was the missing piece of the puzzle he didn't know he had been searching for. "Liam," Emma said again, her voice breaking through his thoughts. "Are you sure you're okay?" Liam looked at her, and for a moment, he wondered if she could read the confusion in his eyes. She was waiting for him to respond, to reassure her that everything was fine, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he smiled faintly, nodding. "I'm fine," he lied, though even to his own ears, the words felt hollow. The music played softly in the background, but it was as if he could no longer hear it. He couldn't hear anything except the racing of his own heart, the growing pull he felt toward the woman who was still standing across the room, unaware of the effect she had on him. Liam squeezed Emma's hand, trying to focus, to force himself back into the present, but his mind kept drifting. The tension between what was expected of him and what he truly felt was beginning to suffocate him. He needed air, he needed clarity. He excused himself from Emma, telling her he was going to grab a drink. He wasn't sure if she bought it, but she didn't question him. With a polite smile, she let him go. As Liam moved through the crowd, the noise of the gala grew quieter, and his focus sharpened. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman by the windows. He wasn't sure what would happen if he approached her, but he knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The noise of the gala seemed to fade as Liam made his way across the room, his heart racing with every step. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. He had just walked away from Emma, his fiancée, for the second time that night, and this time, he didn't know if he could go back. The woman by the windows was still there, standing alone, as if the world around her didn't matter. She wasn't dressed in the glamorous attire most of the guests wore. Instead, she had on a simple, elegant dress that seemed to make her stand out even more. Her eyes were focused on the crowd, but Liam could tell she wasn't really seeing any of them. It was as if she was lost in thought, unaware of the effect she was having on him. His feet carried him closer, and as he approached, he could feel the tension building inside him. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, but in that moment, he knew one thing for certain. This was a moment that would change everything. She looked up just as he reached her side, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her gaze that made him stop. She didn't smile, didn't acknowledge him with a polite greeting like most people did. Instead, she simply raised an eyebrow, as if surprised that he had come over at all. "I wasn't expecting you," she said softly, her voice low but steady. Liam blinked, taken aback by her calmness. He was used to being the one who commanded attention, the one who could control a room. But here, in front of this woman, he felt strangely powerless. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come out. He had never been one for small talk, and this situation certainly didn't call for it. Instead, he just stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say or do. Finally, he found his voice. "I couldn't stop looking at you," he admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. The woman didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, she simply nodded as if she had expected him to say something like that. "I noticed," she said. Her gaze softened for just a moment, but then she turned away, looking out over the crowd once more. "Why did you come over here?" she asked, her voice quiet but full of curiosity. Liam's mind raced, but his answer came from somewhere deep within him. "Because I couldn't ignore what I was feeling. I don't know what it is, but I can't just pretend anymore." He could hear the vulnerability in his own voice, and it made him uncomfortable. He had never been vulnerable before, never had the need to be. But with her, it was different. She didn't make him feel weak or unsure. Instead, she made him feel like he could finally be himself, without the masks and the expectations that had always defined him. The woman looked at him again, her eyes studying him in a way that made him feel exposed. She seemed to be weighing something, deciding whether or not to say something more. For a long moment, there was silence between them, and it was in that silence that Liam realized just how much he wanted her. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter now, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "You know, you don't have to do this. You don't have to be here with me." Her words hit him harder than he expected, and for a moment, he felt like he had just been slapped. He opened his mouth to protest, but she held up a hand, silencing him. "I don't need you to make a decision right now," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You have a life, a future that's already planned out for you. You don't need to mess it all up for me." Liam stood frozen, her words echoing in his mind. It was true, wasn't it? He had everything he was supposed to want. The perfect fiancé, the perfect future, the perfect life. But as he stood there, looking into her eyes, he realized that none of it felt real. It was all a carefully constructed illusion, a life he had been living because it was expected of him, not because it was what he truly wanted. The woman in front of him was real, her presence undeniable, and in that moment, Liam felt as though he had found something worth fighting for. "I don't want that life anymore," he said softly, the words slipping out before he could stop them. The woman's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her face, but then it was gone, replaced by something else, something more vulnerable. She took a step back, her gaze flicking away, and Liam felt a pang of regret, as if he had said too much too soon. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't know how to answer, but all he could think about was how he felt in that moment, how everything seemed to make sense when he was near her. "I'm saying that I don't know what's going to happen next, but I can't walk away from this." "I can't walk away from you," Liam said, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure if she would turn away from him, if she would laugh at him, or if she would feel the same way. But in that moment, he knew he had to say it, to at least try. The woman didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, her eyes locked on his, and Liam could feel the tension in the air between them. Then, slowly, she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, not a grin, but a small, knowing smile that made his heart skip a beat. "I thought you might say that," she said softly. "But you should know. I'm not the answer to your problems. I'm not the one who's going to fix your life. You have to figure that out on your own." Liam nodded, his chest tight with emotion. He knew she was right. This wasn't about her. This was about him, about finding the courage to make a choice that would change everything. The night was far from over, and Liam had no idea what the next step would be. But one thing was clear. The woman standing before him had awakened something inside him that he couldn't ignore, and he wasn't going to walk away from it. Not this time. The air between them felt charged, as if the entire gala had faded into a distant hum while Liam stood facing the woman who had shaken the ground beneath his feet. Her small smile lingered, gentle but cautious, reminding him that this moment was not a fairy tale but a turning point he could no longer ignore. Liam took a slow breath, trying to gather the courage to speak again, but before he could say anything, she glanced over his shoulder and her expression shifted. He turned to see Emma moving through the crowd toward them, her eyes scanning the room with growing worry. "You should go," the woman whispered, her voice steady but her gaze full of something he could not quite name. "She is looking for you." Liam felt a twist in his chest. The last thing he wanted was to hurt Emma. She had been a part of his life for years, a comforting presence he had always thought he needed. But now, he realized that comfort was not the same thing as love, and pretending otherwise would only cause more harm. Still, he could not just walk away. Not without a word. "Wait for me," he said softly. The woman looked at him as if unsure whether to believe him or not. "I cannot promise I will still be here," she replied quietly. "People like me do not stay long in places like this." Liam opened his mouth to protest, but Emma's voice cut through the air. "Liam," she called, her heels tapping sharply against the polished floor as she approached. The woman stepped back, positioning herself slightly behind a pillar as if trying to disappear from view. Liam turned to face Emma, guilt tugging at his conscience. Her eyes searched his face, filled with confusion. "Where did you go?" "You just walked off without saying anything." Liam forced a smile that felt painfully strained. "I just needed a moment," he said, his voice low. "Everything tonight has been a lot." Emma reached for his hand, her grip tighter than before, as if she feared he might slip away again. "We can leave if you want," she offered softly. "We do not have to stay until the end." Her kindness made his stomach tighten. She deserved honesty, not half-truths wrapped in politeness. But he was not ready to tell her the truth. Not yet. He needed to understand it himself first. "Let us stay a little longer," he said, glancing subtly over Emma's shoulder. The woman by the windows was gone. Liam's heart dropped. He scanned the room, but she had vanished into the crowd, leaving behind an ache he had not expected. Emma followed his gaze, noticing the way he searched the room. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked, her tone light, but edged with suspicion. Liam swallowed hard. "No, just looking around." Emma nodded slowly, though her eyes lingered on him longer than necessary. She could sense something was off, but she did not push. Not yet. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne glasses, and Emma took one, handing it to Liam with a tender smile. "Let us try to enjoy tonight," she said. "This is supposed to be our celebration." Liam lifted the glass to his lips, but the champagne tasted flat, flavorless, as if his senses were too overwhelmed to register it. Emma guided him back toward the center of the gala, where guests congratulated them, complimented Emma's dress, praised the perfect couple. Liam nodded mechanically, offering polite smiles, but his mind drifted again and again to the woman who had disappeared. Every few minutes, he glanced toward the entrance, hoping she might reappear, but the doorway remained empty. Hours seemed to pass in slow motion, each conversation deepening the weight in his chest. He felt trapped in a life that suddenly felt foreign, like a suit tailored for someone else. Eventually, when Emma excused herself to speak with a family friend, Liam took the opportunity to slip away again, weaving through the crowd toward the hallway. He needed air, he needed space, and more than anything, he needed to understand what had just happened to him. He pushed open the side door, stepping into the quiet corridor illuminated only by soft sconces. The muffled sounds of the gala buzzed behind him as he exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. And then he saw her. She was standing near the exit, her hands clasped in front of her, as if she had been waiting, deciding whether she should walk out of his world forever. Liam's heart lurched. "You stayed," he whispered. She lifted her gaze, her eyes steady and unreadable. "Only because. I thought you might have something to say before I leave," she replied. "If you do not, I will walk away right now." Liam stepped toward her, the words rising in his chest like a tide. He could no longer hold back. "I cannot let you walk away," he said, his voice cracking with truth he could no longer hide. The words Liam had been holding back for so long were finally slipping out, each one more desperate than the last. He stepped closer to the woman, his heart racing as he tried to find the right thing to say, the words that could undo the confusion that had settled in his chest. "I don't want this life," he said quietly, his voice raw. I don't want to marry Emma. Not when I know I'm not being true to myself. The woman looked at him, her expression unreadable, and for a moment, Liam felt a flash of doubt. Was he making a mistake? Could he really throw everything away? But then he saw the way she held his gaze, steady and unwavering. She wasn't judging him. She was waiting for him to find the courage to speak his truth. I've been living a life that everyone expected me to live, Liam continued, his hands trembling slightly. But every time I look at you, it feels like I'm finally waking up. The woman didn't speak right away, and Liam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. I don't know who you are, but I know I need you, he added, his voice barely above a whisper. The words felt foreign on his lips, like a confession he had never planned to make. She took a small step back, her eyes flickering with a hint of uncertainty, but she didn't walk away. She didn't even move. She just stood there, her arms at her sides, waiting for him to continue. I've been trapped in a life that's not mine, Liam said, his voice stronger now. And I don't know what comes next, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't go back to the way things were. For a moment, there was only silence between them, thick and heavy. The weight of his confession hung in the air like a fog, and Liam wasn't sure if he had made the right choice. He wanted to reach for her, to tell her that he didn't care about the consequences, that he only cared about what was real, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. He needed her to make the decision too, to be sure that she felt the same way. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm but firm. You don't know me, she said softly, and I'm not the answer to your problems. Liam's chest tightened at her words. I never said you were, he replied quickly. But what I do know is that when I'm with you, everything feels real. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to hide who I am anymore. She took a deep breath, her gaze softening for the first time since they had met. Liam, she said, her voice barely a whisper. You have to figure this out on your own. I'm not going to be the person who saves you. Liam stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. I'm not asking you to save me, he said, his voice low but steady. I'm asking you to be with me, to help me find what I've been looking for. I know it won't be easy, but I can't keep living in this lie. The woman's eyes searched his face, and for a brief moment, Liam thought she might say no, might turn away from him and leave him standing there, exposed and vulnerable. But instead, she nodded slowly, her lips curving into a faint smile. I can't promise you anything, she said quietly, but I'll stay. For now. Liam's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and hope. He had no idea where this path would lead, but in that moment, he didn't care. He wasn't going to let fear or doubt control him anymore. He was ready to take the first step towards something real. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She stepped closer, and for the first time, there was no distance between them. No walls. Just two people standing together, ready to face whatever came next. You don't need to thank me, she replied softly. Just don't run away. Liam nodded, his heart full. He had made the right choice. As they stood there, the sounds of the gala still echoing from behind the closed door, Liam knew that he had taken the first step toward finding the life he had always been meant to live. A life that was his own. And maybe, just maybe, he had found the person who would help him find his way. Let's go, he said, taking her hand in his, ready to face whatever came next, together. As Liam and the woman stood there, hand in hand, everything around them seemed to blur. The distant hum of the gala, the clinking of glasses, the laughter of guests, all faded into a quiet background. In that moment, it was just the two of them, and for the first time in a long while, Liam felt like he could breathe. He wasn't playing a part anymore. He wasn't following someone else's script. He was simply existing, fully and completely, with someone who saw him, who understood him, even if they didn't know each other yet. As they walked out of the hallway, Liam couldn't shake the sense that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't predict, and somehow, that felt freeing. They made their way to the car parked outside, the cool night air kissing their skin as they approached, but there was no conversation at first. Liam was lost in his thoughts, still processing the conversation he had just had, while the woman walked beside him, quietly confident, with a calmness that made him feel like everything would be okay. She had not promised him anything more than her presence in that moment, but it felt like enough. The weight of the decision he had just made began to settle in, and for the first time, he felt something close to peace. As they reached the car, Liam hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say next. The words that had come so easily before seemed to have vanished, replaced by the overwhelming realization of what he had just done. He had walked away from the life he had known, from the path that had been laid out for him, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what came next. But he had already made his choice, and as the woman opened the car door, he followed her inside. The drive was quiet, the city lights flickering as they passed by, but it didn't feel awkward. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a connection that neither of them had to force. Liam stole a glance at her, noticing how the soft glow of the streetlights made her look almost ethereal, like she belonged in a different world. And for a moment, he wondered what that world might look like. What would it be like to be with someone who didn't care about money or status, who didn't expect anything from him other than his true self? He didn't know, but he was about to find out. "Where are we going?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. The woman turned to him, her eyes soft, but her lips curved into a small smile. "Somewhere you can think," she said. "Somewhere you can be who you really are." Liam nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had been living a lie for so long, always trying to meet expectations, always trying to please others. But now, standing on the edge of something new, he felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could find a life that was his own. As they drove further into the city, Liam couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement, of anticipation, building inside him. He had no idea what was coming next, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face it. When they finally arrived at their destination, the car slowed to a stop, and the woman turned to him. "This is where you can start," she said, her voice low, but full of meaning. Liam stepped out of the car and followed her inside, unsure of where they were, but trusting her completely. The building was old, a bit worn down, but there was something welcoming about it, something that made him feel like he could leave the weight of the world behind. They entered through the front door, and Liam was immediately struck by how different it felt inside. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, filled with the kind of comfort he had never known. The walls were lined with artwork, photographs, and personal mementos, a stark contrast to the sterile, polished world he had come from. "This is your space now," the woman said, her tone gentle. "Here, you don't need to be anyone else. You just need to be you." Liam stood still for a moment, taking it all in, before slowly nodding. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could actually create it. He didn't need to be the man everyone expected him to be. He didn't need to live up to the legacy of his family, to the business deals, or the public image. He just needed to find himself, and for the first time, he felt like he could. The woman smiled at him, as if she knew exactly what he was thinking. "Are you ready?" she asked. Liam looked at her, a sense of calm settling over him. "I am," he replied, his voice steady. It was time to stop pretending, time to stop living a life that wasn't his. And as he took his first step into this new world, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to face it alone. As Liam stepped into the unfamiliar space, his heart still pounded with the weight of everything he had left behind. The building was simple but inviting, a stark contrast to the extravagant life he had known. The soft hum of music from a nearby room, the smell of old wood and paint, and the warm, dim lighting created an atmosphere that made him feel both out of place and oddly at home. For the first time in his life, he wasn't surrounded by luxury, by expectations, by the facade of success that had been drilled into him since he was a child. He was simply here, with nothing but his thoughts and the woman who had guided him to this moment. She stood beside him, her presence calming, and he felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. She had promised him a chance to breathe, to think, and now he was here, finally free of the weight that had been pressing down on him for so long. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly, as if reading his mind. He turned to her, her words simple but heavy with meaning. "This is your space, Liam. You don't have to be the person everyone wants you to be anymore. You can just be." He nodded slowly, his throat tightening at the truth of her words. The pressure he had felt for so long, the constant pull to be the perfect son, the perfect businessman, the perfect fiancé, had all come crashing down in the last few hours. And yet, here he was, standing on the edge of something new, something unknown. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time, he didn't feel like he had to please anyone. He didn't have to fit into anyone's expectations. He could simply live. He took a deep breath, the weight in his chest lifting just a little. I've been running for so long, Liam admitted, his voice low. Running from myself, from what I really want. I thought I knew who I was, but now, he trailed off, unsure of how to finish the thought. The woman, whose name he still didn't fully know, smiled gently. You don't have to know everything right now, she said, her voice soothing. You just have to take one step at a time. It's okay not to have it all figured out. Liam looked around the room, his gaze settling on the various pieces of art hanging on the walls. Each one was different, a mix of styles and colors, each with its own story to tell. This place, he murmured, almost to himself, it feels real. The woman nodded, her eyes softening. This is a place for people who are looking for something more than what the world tells them they should want. It's a place for people who are ready to find their true selves, no matter how messy or complicated that journey may be. Liam swallowed, the weight of her words settling deep within him. He had spent so much of his life trying to conform, trying to live up to the image others had of him. But now, as he stood in this quiet space, surrounded by people who were trying to find their own paths, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. I'm ready, he said, his voice steady for the first time that night. Ready to start over. She smiled at him, a warm, knowing smile that made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could do this. It won't be easy, she warned, though there was no judgment in her voice, only understanding. But nothing worth having ever is. Liam met her gaze, a sense of resolve forming in his chest. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or where this new path would lead, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to take the first step. He wasn't afraid to walk into the unknown, to leave behind the life that had been mapped out for him. He was ready to discover who he really was, to face the challenges ahead, and to finally live for himself. As the woman turned and began to walk deeper into the building, Liam followed, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he had a chance at a real life, a life that was his own, a life that was just beginning. As Liam walked deeper into the building, following the woman, he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. It was as if the weight of the world had finally been lifted from his shoulders. He had no idea what he was walking into, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't matter. He wasn't rushing to meet deadlines or navigate family expectations. He wasn't pretending to be someone he wasn't. For the first time in years, he was simply walking forward, ready to face whatever came next. The woman led him to a small room at the back of the building. It was quiet, almost serene, with large windows letting in the soft glow of the moonlight. There were a few people inside, all absorbed in their own activities, some painting, others writing, a few reading. It felt like a sanctuary, a space that was free of judgment and expectations. This is where the real work happens, the woman said softly as she gestured to the room. Not just the work of the hands, but of the heart. Liam looked around, taking it all in. It was nothing like the world he had come from. The world of boardrooms, high-powered meetings, and polished appearances. This was raw, unfiltered, and, for some reason, it made him feel more alive than he had ever felt before. He looked back at the woman, who was watching him with a knowing look. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, he admitted, his voice quiet. She smiled gently, as if she had expected him to say that. You don't have to do anything yet, she said. Just be. Let yourself feel. Let yourself breathe. Liam nodded, unsure of how to proceed, but he felt a strange comfort in her words. It wasn't about achieving anything, proving himself, or meeting expectations. It was about giving himself the space to simply exist. He moved toward one of the tables, where a blank canvas sat waiting, and instinctively picked up a paintbrush. He hadn't painted since he was a child, but something about the stillness of the room, the quiet hum of creativity around him, made him want to try. He dipped the brush into the paint, his hand trembling slightly, and began to make the first strokes. It wasn't much at first, just a few lines, a swirl of color, but as he continued, he felt something shift inside him. The weight that had been sitting in his chest for so long began to lift, little by little, with each stroke. For the first time in years, he wasn't worried about the outcome. He wasn't focused on impressing anyone or creating something perfect. He was simply creating, for the sake of creating, and that felt like enough. The woman watched him for a moment, then quietly turned and walked toward the back of the room, leaving him to his thoughts. Liam didn't notice at first, so lost in the moment of painting, but when he looked up again, she was gone. He felt a small pang of disappointment, but then he realized that she had given him something more valuable than any guidance or direction. She had given him the freedom to find his own path. As he continued to paint, he let himself explore, let himself feel the colors, the brushstrokes, the quiet connection to something deeper. It wasn't about what he had been told he should do. It was about finding what he wanted to do, what made him feel alive. The room was quiet, and in that stillness, Liam felt something shift inside him. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid. He was ready to walk it, one step at a time, with no map, no plan, but with a heart that was finally free to choose its own direction. As the days passed, Liam found himself returning to the room time and time again, each time with more ease, more confidence. The blank canvas that had once felt intimidating now seemed like an invitation. With every brushstroke, he uncovered more of himself, more of the man he had buried under layers of expectations. It wasn't just the painting, it was the quiet moments, the space to think, the absence of pressure that allowed him to finally breathe. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was doing something because he wanted to, not because he had to. The woman, whose name he had learned was Sarah, had been right. He didn't need to be anyone else. He just needed to be himself. One evening, after hours of painting, Liam stood back from his work, surveying the colors and shapes that had come together on the canvas. It wasn't perfect, but it was his. And for the first time, that felt enough. As he wiped the paint from his hands, he turned to see Sarah standing in the doorway, watching him with a smile. "You've come a long way," she said quietly, her eyes soft with approval. Liam nodded, the weight in his chest feeling lighter than ever. "I think I finally understand what you meant," he said. "It's not about creating something perfect. It's about finding something real." Sarah stepped into the room, her presence calming. "Exactly," she said. "And sometimes, finding what's real means you have to let go of what you thought you wanted." Liam smiled, feeling a peace settle over him. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know where this journey would take him, but for the first time, he didn't need to. He was no longer running from his own life, from the expectations of others. He was simply living, creating, and being. The next chapter of his life was still unwritten, but Liam no longer feared the unknown. With each step, he felt more and more certain that this was the path he was meant to walk. A life of his own, built not on the foundations of what others expected, but on the quiet strength of his own truth. And for the first time, that was enough.